Welcome everyone again to some pro wrestling content. I feel weird that there's no a title to this. I'm just so used to saying a title of something. Who knows? Maybe. But we are back once again covering another WrestleMania event on the lead up to WrestleMania. We were supposed to do this on Thursday, but the ABJ podcast had a late interview that night with Brad DeMeo. Great conversation. Probably we did really well too. A lot of people really enjoyed it. Brad's always a great conversation. Super cool dude. So Diamond City War Machines off the list. They're done. They're on the podcast. It's on record. It's on wax, as I say, BP. But that one's done. We have 2 more episodes coming up very, very soon. Next week coming up will be Nathaniel Cunningham on the podcast. He'll be episode 41, and then ending out the month with the queen of the independent wrestling scene, Mary Elizabeth.
The
she
first
can do no
lady
wrong
of independent wrestling, since this is WrestleMania 5.
Yeah, she is the first lady. She can do no wrong. Everyone says she's a cheater. I've never seen it ever in professional wrestling. Mary, straight down the books. And we'll do a quick little rundown real fast now of the following month. So
the way you have to say that, hang on real quick. The way you have to say that tonight is Mary Elizabeth.
And everyone has the lust in her eyes, and if Tommy Vex sees you, it's gonna be a problem. Oh yeah.
Somebody needs to have Tommy in a long-term tag team where the other person has lust in their eyes for Mary Elizabeth. I
think that happened. It was Big Dust.
Well, Big Dust. But Big Dust is awful. Is an awful person and left her at the altar.
Yeah, Big Dust had lust in his eyes for Mary Elizabeth.
I think Mary Elizabeth had lust in her eyes for Big Dust. Was the story there?
Yeah. Well, let's run down April real quick. So I'm really excited for April, and we're already booked for April and June. May, and then June's. I'm working on June.
It would be hilarious if you're booked for April and June, but not May.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody was just really busy that month. So Pete Corvus will be episode 43. I was at that match where he bled like that. It was crazy. Dylan Mesh, which we're gonna talk pro wrestling and our common ground of being Monty area alumni. Rembrandt, long overdue. Never had Rembrandt on the podcast on Tornado Tag or anything, and he was a friggin' logo. So long overdue. This one I'm really excited about. This guy's a megastar here. Daniel Alexander, excited to have him on. Super high energy, fun to watch. Mr. Sam, another Jersey guy. He's gonna be really fun to hang out with. My buddy James, he lives in the UK now, but he's a former School County resident. He was huge with Skook Recovers when helping a lot of people in their recovery, and now lives over in the UK. And he started his own podcast that he may be using our StreamYard to help create. But and then Kit Raff joins the podcast. Always fun to talk and hang out with Kit Raff. And then once again, long overdue, Cosmic enters the podcast fray. Excited to have her on for episode 50. And then unfortunately, crazy stuff has transpired.
Hell has frozen over.
Yeah, it's been a nutty situation. I think the best way to just talk about it is just show you guys. Let's get rid of this real fast because the overlay is blocking it. Yeah, let's just show you. Yo. Yeah. What's up, man? Hey, what's going on, Massey? Yeah, I know the show's coming up. Code ABJ, baby. Discount off your tickets. Yeah, of course. I mean, I have the month really booked for the month. I mean, I got Daniel Alexander is going to be on the show. I got Kit Raff coming up on the show. So I do have some Smash representation. You want more? I could try to get one in. Who are you thinking? No. Absolutely not. What do you mean, why? Did you see? Oh, you know what? I'm a team player. High tension, Smash. I got you guys. I'll do whatever I got to do. Yeah, I'll do it. That's only because I love you. But he better be on his best behavior. All right, man. Yeah, we'll squeeze it in on the 30th. It'll be a Sunday. The last episode of the month, yeah. Yeah, it'll be 51. All right. Dude, you owe me. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Mother. Ricky Price is going to be on the podcast. Yeah, the worst. It's probably the worst thing that ever happened to the podcast. And
you have Cosmic as episode 50, a capstone episode 50. You get to celebrate it, and the next episode.
Yeah, we might just end it at 50. Just pack it up.
I have long thought that all that you and Ricky Price need is to just be put together in the same room to hash everything out and to make nice. And then it finally happened. He wound up sticking your head in the toilet. So maybe not.
Yeah. I haven't gotten a swirly since middle school. And Ricky Price, said my hair needed to be washed, but it was, Ryan Vox said proud of you on that promo. First promo ever, by the way. Pretty happy about that. Actually, I've done a skit or two, but that was my first promo. But I was thinking about it more, and I think starting in the month of April, I think I'm going to do more promos to lead up to podcast interviews. Not so much promos, but just like small little video clips of being like, hey, I have such guests on, and you may have seen them here, and here's where you can go support them and check them out Friday at this day, or Thursday at this day, or Tuesday at this day. So I'm going to incorporate that more. I think there's more things I can be doing, which is insane to think about because I'm doing a lot to keep pushing this brand. But I think we're like 3 or 4 subscribers away from 600 on YouTube. A lot of cool things going on, and I'm really pumped about it. Outside the Ring with Ryan, he's a fellow content creator. Can't wait to watch them all. I would definitely like to be on the podcast one day. Well, we're thinking about, I was talking to you, Ryan, about maybe you joining this panel and picking a wrestling show to watch and come hang out with us. We did get a request sent to me on Facebook today, which is really, really exciting. Love getting those. So when people have requests for content, makes my day. I did send it to our group chat. I'm trying to find it now here. Somebody wants us to do a review of Battle Royal at the Albert Hall, which was Ric Flair's UK debut. So that is on the list. So next week is what, 28? WrestleMania 28.
Yeah.
And then
I love that on that video box it says Ric Flair, RICK. They didn't even spell Rick right.
Oh, I love that. I didn't even notice that. That's great. But yeah, that is on the list. We put it to the list. So thank you guys for giving us all the great feedback and checking everything out. The content is coming along. Less bookings means more opportunities to go film stuff on the weekends. So Ryan Vox said he just watched that a couple weeks ago. Well, maybe Ryan Vox might have to join us and review that show with us. Maybe have Ryan Vox join us again, which is always a great time.
The only thing I saw was there's a 15-minute Earthquake Big Boss Man match. I'm like,
They should have went Broadway. They just kept going.
No, they shouldn't. I think that is a Broadway for them.
Yeah. 28 is going to be a good one. I've never watched WrestleMania 5. Well, let's get right into WrestleMania 5, and then we'll close it out with more stuff that you guys are into here. So WrestleMania 5 was the 5th annual WrestleMania professional wrestling pay-per-view event produced by the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, now WWE. It took place April 2nd, 1989 at the Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Love that Atlantic City is getting more opportunities to put more wrestling events on. I hope that becomes a wrestling place again. There was a total of 14 matches. Eat your heart out, Pennsylvania independent scene.
Too many matches.
The main event there was Hulk Hogan versus Macho Man Randy Savage for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship build as the Mega Powers explode. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on here. This was the flagship pay-per-view having held in 1985. It was held annually between mid-March and April following the advent of Survivor Series, and then Royal Rumble, and then SummerSlam, which is WWF's Big Four, which is still a thing here today. It was held at Trump Plaza Hotel and Casino, which I don't think is open anymore, is it?
Oh, no. They're all... The Trump casinos, they had their first bankruptcy a few years after this in 1991. They subsequently had several more and went out of business about 10 years ago.
You're telling me he's not a smart businessman and he has filed bankruptcy?
Bankruptcies.
I don't believe it. That doesn't check out on my list. But anyway, we won't go too much into that. Run DMC performed at this event. Poor Rockin' Rebel was forced.
Rockin' Robin.
Rockin' Robin, Rockin'
Rebel singing national anthem would have been entertaining for completely different reasons.
Yeah, Rockin' Robin was just struggling through America the Beautiful. Our commentators for the evening: Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse Ventura, Mean Gene Oakland, Tony Schiavone with a real high pitched voice, and Sean Mooney. Your interviewers: ring announcer Howard Finkel, and referees were Joey Morella, Earl Hebner, Dave Hebner, Tim White, and Freddie Sparta. For this contest. But BP, take us through what you know and what you have.
Oh, this is the germination of me as a wrestling fan. This is the first WrestleMania I remember being like super hyped for. We didn't have pay-per-view where I lived at the time. This isn't the first WrestleMania I saw live on pay-per-view. That would actually be WrestleMania 6. And yeah, me too, boss. Me too. Having heard that man talk, I can't imagine him singing. And this was the biggest thing in the world for me. This was where like I was up. This is the first time I got sad that we couldn't get pay-per-view. And actually I was kind of sad that we didn't go elsewhere. Like I did the pay-per-view before this was the first Royal Rumble pay-per-view, which is the first it's the first wrestling pay-per-view I've ever seen live. Me, my dad, and my cousin would all go to another cousin's house in Delaware where they actually had pay-per-view. And I don't know why we didn't for this one. But yeah, it is very much a one-match show. It is very much built around Hogan and Randy Savage. And that whole Randy Savage story, the through line of Savage and Elizabeth from his debut in '86 until WrestleMania 7, and even the stuff after that with the wedding, is the best long-term storytelling WWE has ever done to this day. All respect to this bloodline angle, all respect to a lot of stuff they've done. This is the best. If you are into like the modern wrestling style, the modern work rate style, not the show for you.
Nope.
And
tough watch. It was a tough watch. I'm not gonna lie.
I love this is I can watch this stuff all day. It doesn't have to be it doesn't all have to be Kenny Omega matches.
Real early on, I was into it. I was like, okay, this is how we're gonna set the pace for the show. We're gonna build, and then the seatbelt stayed on the entire time, just waiting.
Yeah. So let's get right to it because there are 14 matches on the show.
Well, real quick, one thing that I think more independent talent are doing, and I love it, and I hate to give him credit, but Ricky Price is doing it very well, is the bits and the promos, and this had plenty of that. Fuji running the 5K, you know what I mean? Like more goofy shit to lead up to a match is always helpful. Like just talent, do it. It's fun. Once you start recording and you do one and then people start responding to it, it's like a drug, and then you're going to record them for every show you do. Don't do the whole can't wait for this weekend to fight you at a
doing the promo
place.
In your car.
Yeah. Get creative with it. Have fun. Because
intent behind the message that you are putting out.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and listen, I didn't give a shit about any of that match, but Fuji doing the 5K was fun, and it made something for commentary to talk about too, which they got to play on. You know, it's I don't know. That's what I do like about the old school is they did lean a lot on bits and skits and storytelling
and just very over the top characters.
Yeah,
the super over the top characters. I love Axe. Anytime Axe would call him Fuge the Stooge, I just love it. Love it. The lead up to this show, I remember.
I have a member of Demolition now as a friend on TikTok.
Oh.
He was the third member later on added in.
I don't think he's your friend on TikTok then.
Adam Bomb.
That is not a member of Demolition.
Oh no, he's not Crush. That's I always get
Crush is dead. Yeah. So yeah, I would be very surprised.
Not a Demolition guy, but Adam Bomb. I just became friends with on TikTok. I might reach out. Maybe have Adam Bomb on the podcast.
The Night Stalker.
Yeah, I don't know why I always get Adam Bomb and Crush because they came.
Well, they were a team. They were Chronic.
Yeah, Chronic,
and they're both named Brian. So
yeah, that's my bad. Sorry. I may be medicated right now.
All right. Not a bad thing.
Yeah.
So our opening match here is the Mighty Hercules and King Haku. This is an edited version on Peacock. When this happened live, Howard Finkel accidentally called King Haku King Tonga, which was his name when he first came into the WWF. And then he became part of the Islanders, and he was Haku with Tama, who was the Tonga Kid. And the storyline here, I'm going to try to jump into the stories behind these matches. Hercules is
real quick. Who do you like? Probably one of the scariest jobs to do that night in professional wrestling is you have to carry Haku to the ring, and for the love of God, don't drop him because
down steps too. Down steps too.
Yeah. Could you imagine being the guy who drops fucking King Haku off a platform?
I would not want to do anything to make King Haku angry in the slightest.
Yeah, I whoever drew straws, like you could tell every guy is just like, please God, just praying to whatever, just praying to whatever deity they believe in. Just
the funny bit with that was when they had King Mabel, and Mabel was a larger gentleman, and the people carrying him out on the throne would act like they were in incredible pain the entire time they were trying to carry out King Mabel. That was fun.
Were they acting or were they actually in pain?
Probably didn't feel great, but I think they had like eight or nine of them. Where usually with King Haku was only like 4 guys.
Yeah, that's terrifying job.
And then similarly, they had shortly after this, because between this and SummerSlam later this year, Haku loses the crown. The crown was almost like a title. It's not on the line here, but sometimes the crown will be defended in matches. And Haku loses the crown to Jim Duggan, and he becomes King Duggan very briefly. But he was just a transition king. He was a transitional king because that was when Savage beat him, became Macho King Randy Savage. And they had the double throne because it would carry out him and Sherry.
Yeah. Welcome Dirty Hills podcast in the building. Kofi Weedston in the building. We got to collaborate with those guys soon too, man. It's long overdue. I know we've been bouncing each other's live streams and supporting each other, but we gotta connect soon, man. So hit me up. Hearing a lot of Haku stories, don't want to mess with that guy at all. Him biting on the nose off a guy.
Biting the nose off a guy, taking a guy's eye out.
Didn't he rip an ear off too?
He may have. I believe anything. The eye thing was Jesse Barr, who was Jimmy Jack Funk in WWE. Or WWF. He was actually part of the Barr family from Oregon, but they brought him in as a Funk cousin because Dory was leaving, and they teamed up with Terry for a little bit.
Terrifying.
But the story here for Hercules and King Haku is that Hercules had been with Heenan. He was a heel with Bobby Heenan, and the Heenan family, I guess, was in need of money. And so Heenan attempted to sell Hercules to the $1 Million Man as a slave.
Pro wrestling.
Wrestling, yes, pro wrestling. There's going to be a lot of that stuff here. There's a lot of stuff on the show that does not age so great. And one of the things is that Hercules was Heenan tried to sell him into slavery, and Hercules turned babyface, broke free of the Heenan family, led to a feud with the $1 Million Man, and led to a feud with Heenan. And so King Haku is now the undisputed king because shortly before this, he disposed of Harley Race at the Royal Rumble. Race was leaving the company. And so this is kind of Hercules getting one last shot against the Heenan family. And he gets the win here. Start of an up and down night for the Brain, where King Haku falls to Hercules.
Yeah. Could you imagine if it was King Hercules? That'd have been crazy.
King Hercules.
I really at this point that I was like, all right, this was a fine opener. Where are we going from here?
Basic, simple, got the job done.
Yeah.
Bobby's ringside, entertaining, always good.
Mm-hmm.
Next match, I was excited for.
Yeah, and this is history here. This is the WrestleMania debut for one of the all-time performers in wrestling, WrestleMania and wrestling, Shawn Michaels.
Mr. WrestleMania.
He sounds completely unrecognizable in the promo before the match.
He's a husky boy too at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Shawn and I love that they had their initials on their shirts. It was like SM and MJ. Yeah, I guess I don't know who's who.
Just in case the fans have problems.
The Rockers are relatively new here. They were brought in initially. They got fired very quickly for some conduct backstage, and then they were brought back toward the middle end of '88.
Is that where they supposedly went and started a bar fight and they say they didn't, and it was like a whole misunderstanding that people were trying to like rib them a little bit.
I don't know what exactly it was. I forget. But they had a reputation for being quite unruly at the time. Marty Jannetty being unruly, who'd have thought?
My guy.
Shawn Michaels being a little difficult to deal with in the 90s or 80s, would have thought. But incredibly talented in the ring, fresh off a great AWA run as the Midnight Rockers. If you can track down old Midnight Rockers and Buddy Rose and Doug Summers matches with Sherry in their corner, it's worth seeking those out. But they drew a tough card here because they are with us, facing off against somebody else making their WrestleMania debut, the Big Boss Man, and Akeem, who is not making his WrestleMania debut, but he's making his debut as Akeem. There you go. Not a rib, that he is the African Dream, which is very funny because the American Dream comes in shortly after this.
Oh, and I got this shirt today, Brian. So now I'm like you.
I can't see what it is.
It's Piper being interviewed by They Live.
Oh, nice. Yeah, mine's a little more kind of low res, low tech.
And I got a new Daniel Bryan shirt. Same color scheme and everything.
Yeah. that is very cool. That's very cool. So we have the Twin Towers taking on the Rockers here. The Twin Tower, Bad Company as well. Well, you would also get kind of the Rockers against. Oh no, I was going to say you kind of get the Rockers against Bad Company at WrestleMania 6, but I think Sato was still part of the Orient Express at that point, so you don't really get. I think it was Sato because Bad Company would be Paul Diamond and Pat Tanaka, and Pat Tanaka and Akio Sato were the original Orient Express. And then they bring in Paul Diamond, who is not Japanese, so he wears a mask and is Kato. Because if you ever see a Japanese guy in a mask, chances are that guy is not Japanese. And that's why he's wearing a mask. Like when they had the Young Dragons in WCW, and they had Jamie-san, which was Jamie Noble in a mask.
Wrestling.
So this is good for what it is, I thought. The Boss Man is very athletic for a guy his size. One Man Gang is not as great as he was in Mid-South, but he's decent too. But this is really just going to be a showcase for the Twin Towers. They're a brand new team. They're getting a big push. They're actually, after this program, in a tag title feud against Demolition. Spoiler for a later match. Big Boss Man, like, whips out a power bomb. I didn't know people were doing power bombs in 1989 in the WWF.
Dude, Sean takes a clothesline in this and sells it like he got killed.
Oh yeah, the Rockers were. If another thing that trying to track down from around this time from their early WWF run, anytime they did the Rockers and the Brainbusters on Saturday Night's Main Event, good stuff. I
gotta go look that up. I've never seen that.
Excuse me, sorry.
You're good.
Bossman does the power bomb. Akeem hits Sean with the big splash. And Brian Vox in the chat is absolutely right. The Twin Towers also help set up the main event. On the main event, on a show they used to do called The Main Event, which was Saturday Night's Main Event, but sometimes not on Saturday, where the Mega Powers exploded because of the events of a match where it was Hogan and Savage against the Twin Towers. And really, Hogan's big feud this feud with Randy Savage was with the Boss Man, who was kind of fresh in from WCW, fresh from being Big Bubba Rogers, Jim Cornette's personal bodyguard. And that first initial heel run for the Boss Man is some of his best stuff. And then from there, we get a backstage interview with Ted DiBiase and Tony Schiavone, which is funny. It's always weird for me to see Tony Schiavone in the WWF. Always weird for me. Always.
Tony Schiavone. He has a real high-pitched voice.
They all did back then. Did you ever hear Jim Ross back then? Hey, this is Jim Ross. That man is lacerated. I learned the word lacerated from Jim Ross.
Tony Schiavone here. I was like, what is that? 2 to 3 falls, Rockers versus Brainbusters.
There may have been. I know there was a 2 out of 3 falls, Brainbusters and Demolition. I think that might be the one where Demolition wins the titles back. Was 2 out of 3 falls. The Rockers Brainbusters match I'm thinking of in on Saturday night's main event would have been a double count out. And yeah, but they had a few. The Rockers were always good for. We'll talk about another really good Rockers match a little later. I gotta say hello to speaking of the Sanctuary, we have Precious on the Sanctuary here. Andre Polino.
Love that guy. Andre
Polino in the chat as well. So our next match, and I know this is where you're going to kind of lose some love for this pay-per-view. Also, Ted DiBiase is the brand new at this point $1 million belt, which is only a few months old. But it's DiBiase and Beefcake, Brutus the Barber, and DiBiase is our next match.
I never got Brutus the Barber Beefcake. I just never got him. Like, he got pushed to the moon so much, and I was like, I always thought like,
I wonder why.
Why? And then as
older,
you
know why now,
yeah. But I was like, why is he here all the time? Like,
it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's not.
Sure, he's a very nice guy, but I was like, there's way better people they could be putting in these scenarios.
And but he was over too. You got to give him, you got to give credit where credit's due. Brutus the Barber was over. That hair cutting gimmick was great. Because he was one of those guys. They had that whole thing at this point of baby faces who did really, really messed up stuff to people, and even not just people they were feuding with, just job guys like enhancement talents. They would just be awful to them. Like Jake would beat an enhancement guy and just put a snake all over him. Brutus would beat like Tom Rocky Stone or Mario Mancini and cut their hair. Like, why are you doing that? He didn't do anything to you. I know you're the barber, but I thought you were a nice guy.
I got to meet Jake over the weekend, and we're very fortunate. We go to a lot of cons. We go to a lot of shows where there's a lot of names and people, and there's not many times where I'm like a little starstruck or I get like, oh my God, I can't believe this person's here type deal. I kind of play it cool. I'm like, oh man, it's pretty dope that we're in the same building as this person. But the whole time I'm there, I just kept looking at him. And I was like, that's fucking Jake. That's Jake right there. And I think Skyros is like, what is wrong? I'm like, bro, like, I kind of got like sentimental a little bit. Like, I didn't cry or anything, but like maybe inside. But I was like, I'll never meet Piper. I'll never meet Perfect. I'll probably never meet Sean, even though he's alive. I'll never meet Scott Hall. I'll never you know what I mean? Like, but like the last guy I remember like being a kid and being a Macho Man. I'll never meet Macho Man. But like Jake's the last guy like from my childhood that I was a fan of, that I liked, that I as a kid, like he made
you hear that, Mick Foley? You hear that, Mick?
Well, I mean, as like a kid, I didn't know who Mick Foley was yet.
Right.
But like Jake was the first guy I rooted for, but he scared the fuck out of me. Like he genuinely, I had fear for Jake the Snake. Like, but I enjoyed him as a wrestler. Like, and then I just like, he's the whole time I was there. I'm like, man, like you like he's the first wrestler that got in my head. Like, he fucked with me as a kid. Like, he got in my brain, and I went up and I got my autograph, and on the table was the 8x10 of the snake biting Macho Man. And I was like, well, I got to get my childhood trauma autograph. and I go, Jake, I said, Jake, you fucked me up with this, man. Like, I bawled my eyes out. Like, he's like, you're not the only one, kid. And then I was just like hearing him talk and like having a conversation with him. And I was just like, man, I learned about snakes and researched snakes because of you. And like to this day, I'm afraid of them, probably because of you. And and I was just like, thank you for everything. Like, I thought you killed Macho Man that day. He goes, I tried to get him. Like, you know, like it was just so good to like meet him. Like, I don't know, like that.
It's funny now that I think of it. Everybody in this match was at Icons that day. Jake was there. Or no. Beefcake. Beefcake was in this match. Not Beefcake wasn't there. But I was thinking Jake and DiBiase was next year at WrestleMania. That was WrestleMania 6. But you have, and it's actually set up. I didn't realize how long that feud was because they start planting the seeds for the Jake and DiBiase feud later on this show.
Mm-hmm. Philly Mike had family over tonight, so he wasn't unable to join us, but he'll be here next week.
He's spending
in a family man.
Yeah, he's spending precious moments with family.
So, but yeah, Jake was there, DiBiase was there, and Virgil, all at Icons on Saturday.
Yeah,
and so, the reason I thought you wouldn't like this match very much is this was a match that didn't really have a whole lot of story to it. DiBiase was kind of coming off of the Hogan feud, the Mega Powers and the Mega Bucks. But I guess because Beefcake is Hogan's buddy, that was the storyline here. Not a whole lot there. They do joke. Jesse Ventura jokes that Beefcake might try to give Donald Trump a haircut, and in the back, Vince McMahon is just thinking. He's like,
Ventura,
18 years from now, pal.
Put a pin in this for now.
Ventura was definitely taking a lot of shots at political and stuff.
Oh, he always did. He always did.
Yeah.
That was Ventura. Ventura, he was himself. He was his own unique guy. On,
I was confused.
What's the matter, Gorilla? You don't want people to come into our country? You just want to tear down the Statue of Liberty? Is that what you want to do,
Wait,
Gorilla?
first of all, it's Gorilla.
Why did he
Monsoon.
have the moment where he was just announced and stood up and
They used to always do that with him. I don't know why. Because he was a big star. Like Jesse Ventura was a big star. He was at this point, he's coming off a Predator. This is around the time they did it aired, I think, as a TV movie, but there was a pilot for a TV show they didn't pick up, but they just aired the pilot as a standalone. It might have been a little later than it's called Tag Team, where it was him and Roddy Piper as cops who become, or I think they're either wrestlers who become cops or cops who become wrestlers or something.
How long did this air?
I think it was only that one episode, but yeah, it was called Tag Team.
Oh, I gotta look that up. I have to see that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, Jesse was in like Miller Lite commercials back then.
The guy's everywhere. He had classified documents.
I think Jesse and Shivani actually had very good chemistry in WCW. Jesse and JR would kind of be a little too snippy toward one another. Jesse and Monsoon had really good chemistry, and it was a different chemistry than Monsoon and Heenan. And then, but Jesse and Shivani,
like Jesse and Monsoon more than like Monsoon and Heenan.
As announcers, I do, because Jesse was a little more serious and was a little more of a straight up color guy, where Heenan was hilarious, but Heenan was better in like that studio role where he could do bits, but also just make jokes. Heenan was good with anybody. Monsoon it was a little extra special, but Heenan was like one of the funniest things ever. You can ever see and it was one of his last things in WWF was the Survivor Series in '93, where they do the Hearts against Shawn Michaels and the Knights, and Heenan just is vicious at Stu and Helen Hart the whole Stu's wearing a Boston Bruins jacket, and it's got like a big yellow like bear face on the back, like a Bruin bear. And Heenan goes, "Oh, look at that! He's got Helen on his jacket."
Well, Gorilla will always go down as one of the best commentators of all time because he had to do a show with Macho Man and what's his name? Who is this guy?
Art Donovan. Yeah.
Art Donovan. Oh my God!
How much does this guy weigh?
This guy looks like a wrestler.
Is that one of the wrestlers? He looks like a businessman.
Yes,
like that's a great line, Fox. Helen, I'm damn.
Listening to the commentary from this show is completely different than like a WrestleMania commentary we would see today, and that was one of the first things I noticed. Is that this was my first time listening to Jesse and Gorilla together. And I was like, wow, this is really good. I really like listening to this. But you could tell during matches that they didn't care about.
Oh, yeah.
They did whatever they wanted. Whereas
if Monsoon didn't care, he would kind of let you know he didn't care.
And that's I'm so spoiled to have like the Michael Cole, the Jim Ross, the Jerry the King Lawler, who are constantly filling in every second with story.
It's different,
kind of relaxing, yeah.
Well,
it's a difference between watching a baseball game on TV and listening to one on the radio.
Yeah,
even though this is on TV.
That's where I think, and I don't want to like toot our horn a little bit, but I feel like that's what we try to pull out a little bit at Sanctuary, myself and BP, is we do give you that new school commentary, but we do still have that old school in us where like we will go off the cuff a little bit and get a little crazy, and maybe some people don't like it, but I mean, we have that mix where we kind of can go either way.
My mission now for season 13 of the Sanctuary is I am going to work in the phrase "I'm damp."
I'll throw an apple juice up to you.
Another great thing on that one, just to talk about a completely different show years later, is eventually Gorilla threatens, who's like, Stu's gonna come over here, and he's like, by the time he gets here, the show will be over. The next
Bobby,
thing,
so good.
the next thing is they show the Bushwhackers, who are
One last
also
Bobby thing. I seen
okay.
someone
Always
shared
have
on.
bringing it.
Yeah, always someone just shared something on was it Instagram or something where it's like even at like his worst moment he was still ribbing Gorilla, and it was a photo of Bobby and he like the jaw's gone. He's at the like late stages of his thing.
Yeah,
And someone hands him a Gorilla Monsoon shirt. He's acting like he's blowing his nose in it.
it's just funny because they loved each other. They were the
Yeah.
best of friends. They were the
Yeah.
best of friends. And so then we have a kind of in between thing after the double count out. Brutus tries to catch DiBiase to cut his hair, but then he gets Virgil instead, and Virgil's already bald. So tough luck there. And
Virgil,
then we
at Icons.
yeah. And then we had another one of those things for the WrestleMania brunch, where the Bushwhackers are just stuffing their face, using their hands, not using utensils. It's so funny that how the Bushwhackers come about, because just before this, they are the sheep herders in the NWA in Crockett, and they are the most violent and vicious tag team, brutal bloodbaths every night, and now they're the Bushwhackers. Hey, Sanctuary Season 13 is coming up.
Yeah.
Can't wait for it.
Yeah.
And this is also the WrestleMania debut, I think the only WrestleMania appearance of the greatest theme music in WrestleMania history. All American Boys from Montreal to Memphis, Parlez-vous Français, because our next match is the Rougeau brothers and the Bushwhackers. And not a great match. It's all the Bushwhackers are just they're having fun now. They're not even really trying. They're just like, okay, we're gonna be clowns. Let's be clowns. They knew the part and they played it.
I watched Luke beat up Mike Skyros at a show in New York one time, and Luke really won the match. Yeah, he won the match and walked around the ring for their 13 minutes just for like show went extra long. He just kept getting all the kids. It was crazy.
Yeah, here you go. John, I'm back in the chat. They went out, they had fun. They lengthened their careers. Heart the Bushwhackers, absolutely. As a kid, I loved the Bushwhackers. They were for kids. That I at this time I was the target audience, and I loved the Bushwhackers. I didn't know who the Sheep Herders were back then. And yeah, they're biting the Rougeau's ass. They're going after Jimmy.
Knowing what I know now of wrestling fans, wow, to go out and lick a wrestling fan's head or face,
yeah. Yeah, maybe they were plants.
Wow.
We also exist in a post lockdown society where we can take that extra second to think about things.
The battering ram. The battering ram was a fun thing too. Like we're just grabs a guy to headlock and runs into the guy.
I bring one of these to every show, and I don't just put it on. I sometimes spray my finger and wipe underneath my nose.
I know somebody. I saw somebody say something where like somebody should have a deodorant booth at a wrestling show. Like nobody would go. They don't bite at home. Why are they going to bite at a wrestling show?
They're not self-aware.
What they need to do is, do you remember back in like 10, 15, it was probably 15 years ago or so. Remember icing? Like somebody would present you with a Smirnoff Ice and you had to take a knee, and you would have to drink the ice. You had to drink the Smirnoff Ice. They should do that at wrestling shows, but it's with a stick of deodorant. Like somebody presents you with a stick, takes a knee and presents you with a stick of deodorant, and you have to put it on.
Yeah. That would be my heel. If I was a wrestler, that'd be my heel gimmick. I would, you know how Stan Style comes out with whipped cream. I would come out with cans of deodorant and be like, lift up your arms and spray it on the whole front. That
is the oldest heel thing in the book. That Gorgeous George did that. He had the perfume bottle or the perfume atomizer, and he would spray perfume at the crowd. That's the oldest heel thing.
Guy was a genius.
And so I guess the Rougeaus were a little upset at this point because I think they were initially told they were going to win this match, and they were going to get the tag titles shortly after this, and it didn't happen because they wound up signing Arn and Tully. And so the Bushwhackers get the win here. They're brand new. Send the crowd out of the match happy. The fun baby faces who Ryan Vox is absolutely right, made more money than they did as the Sheep Herders. I do not want to. No hatred for the Bushwhackers here. One of the best Hall of Fame speeches ever. Fun stuff. And so then they're going to the back. They lick Sean Mooney, and from that to something a little bit different. making their WrestleMania debuts. It is Mr. Perfect and the Blue Blazer.
It's insane that last match got 9 minutes. Brutus and Ted got 10 minutes to end at a double count out. And Hercules and Haku get 6 minutes. And this match gets almost the shortest time on the card at 5:38. And boy, if we would have known what we know then now, Jesus Christ, this match is money.
Part of that is, it's like a good TV match today. Part of that is that these guys weren't exactly high up on the card. They had big plans for Mr. Perfect, but those plans were down the line. Mr. Perfect was very new at this point. Mr. Perfect had only been around for about maybe 8 months. I think he just very recently gotten the singlet. This is one of the early incarnations of what we see now as Mr. Perfect. If you go back to the
singlet and his like undefeated record or his perfect record.
Yeah, he was still in fact, he's perfect, I think, besides house shows, going into WrestleMania 6, which is where he loses to Beefcake. And it's his first big televised loss.
Hate that.
Well, they were grooming Beefcake for the I think they were grooming Beefcake shortly after that is what I know what it was. Yeah, shortly after that was when Perfect would win the Intercontinental title. And then the plan was to do Beefcake and Perfect again at SummerSlam for the title, for the IC title, but then Beefcake had that parasailing accident. So there was a thought there. But yeah, it's not really. It's like how Tatanka had a big undefeated streak a few years later, and it's broken by Ludwig Borga. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, that's the guy you're gonna have break the streak. Yeah. Vox confirms. First appearance of the singlet, actually televised at least. Yeah, because if you look at the Royal Rumble, which was right before this, he's wearing trunks. Yeah, so this is the first look at the Mr. Perfect we now know.
So this is Mr. Perfect versus the Blue Blazer, Owen Hart.
Hard to watch Owen Hart as the Blue Blazer. I know some people had trouble watching Benoit matches. I guess I can disassociate enough. It's hard to watch Owen Hart as the Blue Blazer for me.
Yeah.
Just knowing how it ends. And I love that they're still kind of referring to Mr. Perfect as Kurt Hennig. And Jesse Ventura even mentions Larry the Axe Hennig is there, is probably watching. And I think they were trying to get away from that, but Jesse would just do that stuff because Minnesota guy. He's going to bring up the Minnesota institution. I wish this match would have been a little bit longer. And then they do the thing.
Not even longer, but at least while I was watching it, it looked like they didn't call anything, and they were just in the ring feeling each other out. And then they're like, all right, I guess it's time for this to end. And it felt like, and someone mentions it, he was like, I forget if it were Gorilla or Jesse, they go, Mr. Perfect looks like really lethargic in the ring, like he's very slow. And I was like, I agree. I was waiting for that to like build into something, but then the match had already ended.
Yeah, Owen was just so quick for his size.
Yeah, Owen Hart was
so light on his feet,
so ahead of his time with some of his athletic stuff that even a guy like Kurt Hennig is.
You could tell he had to keep pulling his mask down.
Yeah,
because he's having a hard time seeing. You can be like he's fixing the eye holes a couple times, but wow.
And I think this might be kind of getting close to the end for the Blue Blazer, because then he's in Japan again for a little bit. He's in WCW for a quick second, and then he comes back in late 91 with the New Foundation with Jim Neidhart.
How do you look at Owen Hart as a talent? Like, look and what he can do in the ring and just be like, meh, we're just gonna
not big enough. This is the peak of it's an upper body business.
Yeah, insane to me. All right,
they were looking for somebody like a guy in our next match. This is where we have the thing where Mr. Fuji runs the 5K in the tuxedo, fun stuff, and then we have it. Oh, then we have Run DMC with the WrestleMania rap. A girl amongst who just totally takes a crap on it.
Yep.
So now we have another match that has a bit of a story behind it, which is the Demolition. I almost said the Demolition, like their song. It's Demolition against the Powers of Pain and Mr. Fuji. This is coming off Survivor Series from the year before, where Mr. Fuji turns on Demolition, helps the Powers of Pain win the Survivor Series match. It's a double turn. The Powers of Pain go babyface or heel. Demolition goes babyface, just because Demolition was getting a babyface reaction anyway. People liked them. So they do the double turn heel here right at the Survivor Series, and they do a match where Fuji throws salt in Axe's eyes leading up to this. Yep, yeah, Owen, definitely the perfect blend of talent and personality once he went heel. He was a total package, and I will always say, and I loved the Psycho Bob Backlund character, but Owen Hart should have been the transition champion to get the belt from Bret the Diesel.
Yeah,
absolutely should have been.
Now the Powers of Pain here, they're
coming to Icons. It looks like in I think June 1st. It's been announced, the Powers of Pain against the Rock and Roll Express.
Yeah, now they're at a point here where the creation of the Powers of Pain is just because they don't have LOD, right?
Well, the creation of Demolition was because they didn't have LOD. These are, these are Road Warrior clones.
Their face paint is so similar to what like like what Hawk and Animal were doing when they weren't doing their WWE version of their face paint.
This was a time where you had a lot of Road Warrior clones. You had the Powers of Pain, you had Demolition, you had the Blade Runners, which was Sting and the Warrior. You just getting two big guys and paint them up, and they don't sell a lot. They win all the time. It was a formula everybody tried to have. If you were a big team, you were trying to emulate the Road Warriors. If you were a small team, you were trying to emulate the Rock and Roll Express. If you were baby faces, and the Midnight Express if you were heels.
Yeah, and once again, Ryan in the chat, probably one of my most cherished wrestling moments in this business so far. Getting to sit with Demolition and doing that Q&A. What a fucking moment! Like that was it was dope. Like that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, Vox is absolutely right. Powers of Pain had already done a feud with the Road Warriors by the time they got to WWF. They had done it in Crockett, and then they couldn't get the LOD to jump, so they got the Powers of Pain and put them with a different manager at first, the Baron. Yeah. Baron von Raschke in a very, very short WWF run.
Yeah,
as their manager at the first SummerSlam, as a matter of fact, when they were still baby.
I might actually take that LOD, or not LOD, fucking Demolition Q&A and put it on this new channel.
Yeah, that was a fun time. It was a fun time.
Crazy.
Looking over on my wall, the lighting's better. I'd use it as my backdrop. I have an autographed picture of Demolition on my wall from that day that was given to me by Wildfire Tommy Rich, of all people.
Yeah.
Still the funniest thing. Still the funniest. Tommy Rich was a trip that day. I love Tommy Rich.
What a guy.
So this is a very rare wrestling appearance for Fuji. One of his last. A regular wrestler back in the 70s, early 80s. Even mentioned a multi-time tag champion. I had a tape around this time. Because anytime I could find a wrestling tape, I was going to beg my parents to get it. And I had Best of the WWF Volume 2. And it's an interesting collection of stuff on there. You have like it opens up with a tag title match where it's the North-South connection, Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch against the Soul Patrol, Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas. It might have been in Hamburg. It was either in Hamburg or Allentown, now that I think of it. Because I think it was a TV taping. And then it ends with It ends with Mr. Fuji and Mr. Saito against Rick Martel and Tony Gurria for the tag titles. So yeah, Fuji definitely a tag wrestler before he was a manager, and not horrible here. He's not like, he doesn't look out of place in the ring. He's not anything amazing at this point, but I don't know how much older he is than Axe. Axe is fairly old at this point. Because when Mr. Fuji was doing that stuff, Axe was in the Mongols, and he was a mass superstar.
Yeah.
And so it's a fairly one-sided match. And so the Powers of Pain don't get much here. And Fuji winds up tagging in. Big mistake. They separate Fuji from the Powers of Pain, and you get the Demolition decapitation for the 1, 2, 3. And the Powers of Pain kind of hung around. They were still a team toward the end of the year in the Survivor Series, but if you go into 1990 is when they kind of split off, and the Warlord goes with Slick, and Barbarian goes with Heenan.
Yeah,
but they do stick around for a while. And then backstage, Tony Schiavone trying to get an interview with Randy Savage, but Savage is in great Psycho Savage mode. He pushes the cameraman. He's running down the hallway. telling everybody he's gonna knock them out. He's ready for Hogan. So a lot of stuff on this show. It can be tedious at points, and back then you just ate it up because you had 4 of these pay-per-views a year and they were all special.
Yeah.
And especially with this one, all leading towards that main event.
Yeah, and it's a real. They do emphasize like just how much it is all about the Mega Powers exploding. Just like the next year, WrestleMania 6 is probably even more of a one-match card than this with Hogan and the Warrior.
Okay, I want to ask a question.
Mhm.
You have moments, obviously, like WrestleMania 3, 2, 1. I don't know what Hogan and WrestleMania 3, Hogan and Andre.
Yep.
And then everyone talks about that match, but then you're like, yeah, but Savage and Steamboat stole the show.
Yeah.
And then you look at a pay-per-view 2 years later here, where you're kind of telling your entire roster to not kill it because you don't want to take away from the main event.
Well, I don't think it's that. It's just that it was go out there. It was never go out there and have a great match. The work rate wasn't really a thing back then. I mean, it was, but if you were into like match quality, you were probably first of all, we didn't talk about this, but this was one of the times that WCW tried to counter program the WWF. Turner had just bought Jim Crockett Promotions shortly before this, and they are doing Clash of the Champions on TBS head to head with WrestleMania to try to tank the buy rate, and they have a big match. They have the new champion Ricky the Dragon Steamboat against Ric Flair 2 out of 3 falls in a match that is a classic. But the WWF didn't really care about go out there and have a great match. That wasn't really. I mean, you had great matches, but it was like, okay, you had a great match, that's fine. But it was more about larger than life personalities, the storylines, just living superheroes. That's why, like, they cared more about how muscular you were than whether or not you could go out there and go a half hour, not get tired, and like nobody who Dave Meltzer was, let alone what kind of stars he gave a match at this point.
Yeah, at this point it was mostly like you had said, story, character, and moment driven. Like, oh, we remember this happening. We remember this happening. It's not you don't really remember a whole lot of match quality from this.
Yeah, and if you do, it was probably Randy Savage. It was Randy Savage and Steamboat. Like Savage and Hogan on this show is not bad at all. There's other stuff that's very bad. Speaking of that, our next match is Dino Bravo with Frenchie Martin in his corner, taking on rugged Ronnie Garvin, fresh from the NWA, only about a year and a half removed, a little less than a year and a half removed from being the NWA champion. And so Garvin's a relatively new guy here. But before that, they say have a very special guest. And making his return to the WWF after about a 4-year absence is Superfly Jimmy Snuka. Speaking of things that didn't age. Well, no, he was in Japan for a bit. He was in AWA for a bit.
Gotcha.
It isn't because of that thing. He was around in WWF for about 2 years after the Nancy Argentino thing.
That was one of the questions on trivia, which was name a wrestler that died or a wrestling thing that died in Allentown, or a wrestler where somebody died in wrestling in Allentown, and it wasn't the Nancy story. It was Deputy
Gary Albright,
and
it was in Hazleton. It wasn't in Allentown. It was in Hazleton. Really? Yeah, they got it wrong on the trivia. It was in Hazleton.
That happened in Hazleton.
Yeah, wow. Gary Albright was married to one of the Anawai sisters. So he married into the Samoan dynasty, and yeah, I believe he had a heart attack in the ring.
Wow.
John and Jack Garvin is drier than a mouthful of sand. Absolutely.
I never that's my biggest fear, and ever being at a wrestling show is just anything like that happening, like someone getting hurt or a heart attack, like fucking please no.
I remember how I remember just, and this was before we were really kind of involved in the behind the scenes stuff, just when Rembrandt did that moonsault to PPW and we thought he broke his legs when he hit his shins against the guardrail.
Oh,
yeah. And luckily Yeah, it was it sounded like somebody hit a bat against this guardrail, and thankfully he was okay. He was really banged up, really bruised up. We thought he broke his legs.
Top rope moonsault to the outside, pile of people catching him, and they caught him perfect, but his legs overextended the pile and then just went bing on the guardrail. It was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. It was crazy.
Yeah. There's not really a whole lot to say about this match. It is a very
finished the match.
Yeah.
Well, when adrenaline's pumping, you don't necessarily feel.
Honestly, after that match, we were like, dude, this is the toughest dude ever. Like, we were like, this is he's an animal.
That was the show where I think the light went on for us at Rembrandt and never went off.
Yep.
Never went off.
Absolutely.
And he's doing some great stuff now. He's I think he'll be vying for the golden ticket at PPW in a few weeks here. It's him, Clutch Adams, Griffin McCoy, and the last one's escaping me. Alec Odin. Going for the golden ticket. But yeah, Garvin here. Garvin was brought in. His whole thing was he had a towel he threw into the crowd. That was like his gimmick, I guess. What they actually did with him is this match, Dino Bravo gets the win here. And it leads to another match. I think it was just Garvin was more feuding with Jimmy Hart than anything. Because I believe it's Garvin and Valentine is the match where it's the loser leaves the WWF. Yeah, because Bravo wins. Yeah, Jimmy Hart isn't even with Bravo at this point. It's still Frenchie Martin. Because Garvin knocks out Frenchie Martin and gives him the Garvin stomp, which is where he just stomps. Orton did it later. He would stomp your arm, stomp your leg, stomp your arm, stomp your head, stomp your other arm, stomp your other leg. And yeah, because shortly after this, he's in a feud with Greg Valentine where he loses. He has to leave the WWF and he becomes a referee and he keeps screwing over Jimmy Hart's guys until they get him reinstated. And that was basically Ronnie Garvin's entire WWF run.
Yeah. Well, we actually took longer to talk about that match than it actually for it to happen. That one got done in 3:06. Yeah.
Yeah, that was just get out. We're running long.
Now the match that I was looking forward to the most, looking back at this card and watching it, and you're like, probably not. And you're right, it could have been a lot better because if Rick Martel would have got involved, it would have been crazy. But still, man, you're going to see Tito Santana work his ass off here. And
Tito was so good. Tito was underrated.
And Arn and Tully are just going to put a clinic on here. It was still a good fucking match.
And another appearance of a great 80s rific wrestling theme, Girls in Cars by Robbie Dupree is Strike Force's theme. And it's them against the Brainbusters. And the Brainbusters are and there's a few other ones later on. This is still a time where not everybody has music. Not everybody has entrance music, and the Brainbusters don't have it. But they're coming out. It's Arn and Tully with Bobby Heenan in their corner. Just a great heel tag team. A clinic in straight up traditional tag team wrestling, cutting the ring in half, isolating a guy. But the big storyline here, and they teased it leading up, like Rick Martel says leading up to this. Oh, I was thinking about getting in the singles competition, but I'm coming back for Tito. I'm doing this for Tito. But they do a spot where they're doing a backdrop on Tito, and he makes a blind tag to Martel. Or I think Martel just reaches out for the tag. Tito might not even realize he had tagged. And so the referee doesn't see it either. Tito goes for a signature flying forearm, but it's missed, and he hits Martel. Martel rolls out of the ring, and this starts off a feud where at any Royal Rumble from this point on that they were both in, when Tito Santana comes in that ring, if Rick Martel is there, he's going right after Rick Martel. They could do a battle royal now, and Tito Santana would go right after Rick Martel.
They should book them at a convention.
I think Martel is retired. I think Martel is retired. Tito is still around, but
and put them on the side of the room and just be like, gotta keep them away from each other.
So Tito goes to the tag later. Martel walks away from him. He's still grabbing his head from the forearm, and he walks off. And now Tito is stuck with the Brainbusters. Yes, the flying forearm, let's call it that. As it was known at the time, hasn't aged well. A lot of times it was called the flying burrito. The flying burrito, because you see, Tito Santana was Mexican. Hashtag wrestling racism. Yes, John.
So forearm does kind of look like a burrito.
One of my buddies actually
hashtag wrestling racism.
He does a measurement test to see if it's a good burrito or not. It has to be as long as your forearm.
There you go. There's a method to this, I guess.
See, I have short arms, so that doesn't really work for me.
Thick though.
Girth, yeah.
It's all about the girth sometimes, BP.
Yeah, that's true.
Not very long, but you know what I mean? You can fit more in it.
All right.
Paul Bo, if you're here.
So and the Brainbusters have one of the very best, very great looking finishers, the spike pile driver. Love the spike pile driver. They're really trying to amp up the Brainbusters here. And shortly after this, right around the summer, or a little after the summer, I think it's just after SummerSlam, or maybe just before, I don't remember. They are the team that finally ends Demolition's reign, which up until very recently, within the I think New Day technically beat it with the way they aired the shows. They had the longest tag team title reign because they won the belts at WrestleMania 4 from Strikeforce, and Martel got hurt in that match, and this was his first match back. They held the titles through WrestleMania 5 into that summer before losing to the Brainbusters. And this is also what leads to, shortly after this, Rick Martel becoming the Model, which was probably the run he's best known for, besides maybe being the AWA champion.
Also like to have a perfume bottle.
Yeah, arrogance. Yes, arrogance. Don't get it in your eyes, though. You can ask your buddy Jake Roberts about that.
Yeah.
One of the most
goddamn stuff will make you go blind.
One of the most intense promos ever. They did something with his eyes. I guess they put contacts in where he's with the doctor, like, Jake, it doesn't look good. He's like, let me see. I want to see. And he's just like, his eye is like milky white. I want to see. I want to see. And that leads to the infamous blindfold match at WrestleMania 6.
So good.
Or no, WrestleMania 7 rather. That was WrestleMania 7, not 6. WrestleMania 6 is Martel's actually the opener on that against Coco Beware.
Well, speaking of Jake,
what about him?
He's next.
Jake already wrestled on this show.
Jake Roberts is next on the card. Jake versus Andre.
Oh no! Well, there's something before that.
Oh,
I keep thinking this is the year that Jake wrestled DiBiase. It was Brutus and DiBiase because we're talking about icons. Yeah, Jake and DiBiase was WrestleMania 6 with $1 million title on the line. Before they were both in the tournament. Next is speaking of things that didn't age well. Hashtag wrestling sexism. Next is hashtag wrestling hashtag wrestling not transphobia, but well, I guess a little bit. It's Piper's Pit. Roddy Piper making his return after a 2-year absence with Brother Love, and here's a moment in time, if there ever was one. Morton Downey Jr. Morton Downey Jr. was a talk show host, and he was kind of a forerunner of Jerry Springer. It was that trash TV thing, but it was always just like him yelling at people, him yelling at especially like liberals. In fact, Jesse even says it's one of his trademark things, like pablum puking liberals. He was it was kind of, if you mix together Jerry Springer, Howard Stern, a dash of Howard Stern, and like Rush Limbaugh, basically. Yeah, it was as highbrow as it sounds. And his other big thing he was known for was smoking a cigarette. He would always have a cigarette. It should be worth noting that Morton Downey Jr. died of lung cancer. So there's that. So he's a talk show host, and Brother Love kind of took over for Piper as the interview guy with the Brother Love show. This is the WrestleMania debut of Bruce Pritchard as Brother Love. Yeah. A very young Bruce Pritchard. He's in his like 20s here. He's a young guy. And because they start with Piper's music, it's this big hyperbolic introduction, and the curtain goes up, and it's Brother Love in a kilt. And he comes down, and he says he has a guest, Rodney Piper. He keeps calling him Rodney Piper. And he basically does an interview where he is playing both parts. He's doing Brother Love, and then he's doing Roddy Piper. I guess, as Pritchard has told it, like Piper usually hated when people did impressions of him, but he liked Pritchard's Roddy Piper impression for some reason.
Pritchard's good at impressions.
Yeah. And then Morton Downey Jr. comes on out, and he makes fun of Brother Love for being a fat guy in a skirt. And then finally Roddy Piper comes out, and Piper, the content here isn't great, but Piper just has that presence. He has just that poise about him, and he's just, it's like, okay, these two idiots have had their fun. Now Roddy Piper is going to show them what's what. And he starts with Brother Love. My favorite line he does with Brother Love is he asks him if he's a Scot, and he's like, I'm a little bit Scotch. And he goes, Scotch is what a Scotsman drinks. Or like, kid, Scotch is what a Scotsman drinks. And he's like, if he's a true Scotsman, he's not wearing anything under the kilt. Brother Love tries to look under Piper's coat. He goes, I'll bite your face off. Like, I'll bite your face off. And so the big thing here is Brother Love gets his kilt ripped off. He's got red underwear under it, and no hearts though. Jim Cornette would be upset at his buddy Bruce. Cornette had to do that where he got his like pants ripped off on Shotgun Saturday Night, and he just had white boxer shorts. And so he went and bought a red Sharpie and drew hearts on his white boxer shorts. So when they got ripped off, he would have the underwear with the hearts on it.
Big Dust just had a callback to that.
Yeah, that's right. So that's Pritchard does a great job of like running out of the ring embarrassed and falling down a few times and just like selling how embarrassed he is. That was fun.
Not the only time we've seen Brother Love fall down really bad. Well, someone who played Brother Love then did a ring announcing job at Camp Leapfrog and went to leave the ring and fell really bad.
That's right. I forgot about the Brother Love at Camp Leapfrog.
Joe Dombrowski, MLW.
That's right. Yeah.
Goes to run out of the ring and legit eat shit during the show.
And as Piper's doing this whole thing with Brother Love, Downey is just throwing cigarettes at him. And he goes to talk to Downey, and he's like, the big thing is that Morton Downey Jr. keeps blowing smoke in his face, and Piper's very clear, Mr. Downey, don't blow no more smoke in my face, over and over again. And he keeps doing it. He talks about how cigarettes are healthy, they're good for you. Again, Morton Downey Jr. died of lung cancer. It was a bit after this, but eventually there are also some very, very, very anti like gay and anti not transgender, but trans like dressing, presenting as a different gender, which is always a thing. Everybody, the one that get heel heat on Piper said he was wearing a skirt. But eventually Piper says, all right, I'll try one of these cigarettes. And Morton Downey Jr. is very happy. He turns around to light a cigarette for Piper. Piper lifts up one of the stools that's there. There's a fire extinguisher under it, and he extinguishes Morton Downey Jr., mercifully ending this segment. And it was shortly after this that the whole Morton Downey Jr. thing kind of crumbled, because it was something that wasn't going to last. And he was kind of getting desperate for publicity, so he said he got attacked at an airport by neo-Nazis who drew a swastika on his forehead. And people were like, and they tried to cut his hair for some reason. And people noticed that the swastika was backwards, like he had almost done it himself in a mirror.
Was he on a show called Empire then later on?
No, this is not a Jussie. I always think of the way Dave Chappelle says it. I always say Jussie Smollett instead of Jussie Smollett. But yeah, so that was kind of the end of Morton Downey Jr.'s talk show. It kind of ran its course shortly after this, but he would do some acting later. He was in Revenge of the Nerds 3, which was one of the lesser Revenge of the Nerds movies. And then speaking of movies, and I think it gets cut out of the Peacock version, but we get a trailer for No Holds Barred, which came out that summer. One of the first movies ever, maybe the first movie I ever saw in a movie theater. Really? I have it. Yeah, I have it on DVD. I would say that we should review it one day, but that would mean having to watch No Holds Barred.
I would love to, because I still haven't watched it.
There are some movies that are so bad they're good, and there's movies that are just bad, and No Holds. I have
such a like easy reaction to things. Like, I'm very easily impressed by things and see good in a whole lot of different stuff. So I'd probably still enjoy it. But if you're saying it's this bad, I'd love to.
I mean, it's worth watching at least once. Maybe one day we'll do No Holds Barred.
We know what we should do. We talked about doing it possibly in the back patio of Pilguru.
Yeah, like a projector, yeah.
But if that's not fixed, because I had to do some work back there,
yeah,
ready to go by the summer, I may be able to talk the Majestic into possibly doing.
If we do a screening of No Holds Barred, that would be a Pilgrim presents No Holds Barred. That would be amazing.
Pilgrim and ABJ presents No Holds Bar at the Majestic, and we can go over and get beers, and then go over to the Majestic and drink beers and watch No Holds Bar.
That you can play a DVD there on the projector. That's right.
I am all for this.
Oh, this needs to happen.
Yeah,
we should. This must happen.
And we can get a whole bunch of wrestling fans to come to the Majestic Theater and see No Holds Barred. Maybe do like a twofer show where like two shows.
Yeah, I have. We could do a double feature, Body Slam, which is actually a fun movie. It's hokey. It's kind of cheesy. There's some things that didn't age well.
Maybe the weekend before SummerSlam, we'll try to do.
Could go the other end too if we wanted to avoid going too hokey. Could show The Wrestler. It was just like the anniversary of that movie.
But The Wrestler's actually a good movie, though.
That's what I'm saying. Going away from hokey.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Mahoning Drive-In. I know they do the double features with wrestling movies. How about we showed The Other Wrestler? Somebody that was in the Vern Gagne of The Wrestler. Somebody that was in that movie was actually at the Majestic Theater.
What's his name?
Ed Asner. Yeah, Ed Asner.
Yeah, I mean, I'll see what I can do. I could see if I can put some connections together to make
that would be amazing.
I mean,
Body Slam,
Body Slam, or The Wrestler, or
I would say Body Slam and No Holds Barred is the way to go. That would be amazing. No Holds Barred, though, I think the guy that steals the movie is Stan Hansen. He's like this tough guy at a bar, and these TV executives are going to this disgusting bathroom, and he goes up to him and just looks at him as they're peeing. He goes, "If it isn't a teeny whiner." That's like the best part of the movie. It's one of the best parts of the movie. He looks like one teeny whiner, two teeny whiner. And it's Stan goddamn Hansen.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to our next match here. Jake Roberts.
Well, we missed also Sean Mooney seeming very nervous interviewing some guy that we can skip over that maybe hosted this show. And Jesse Ventura. Jesse Ventura is angry that Hulk Hogan has a movie because he's the Hollywood guy. We get a recap of everything that led up to the Mega Powers exploding, and then we finally get Jake the Snake Roberts and Andre the Giant with special guest referee and Royal Rumble winner Big John Studd. Yeah. And poor Jake is kind of like an afterthought here. And what had happened is this was an offshoot to. For most of '88, Jake was feuding with Rick Rude. And it started with them going to a draw in the WrestleMania title tournament. And then Rick Rude would do this thing where he'd bring a woman out of the crowd and he would kiss the woman and she would faint from being kissed by Rick Rude. That was his gimmick after a match. There's a story about this, and I think it was, I don't know if it was, it was somebody's wife. I think it might have been Jake's wife, or somebody Jake was seeing. But apparently, one of the times, I want to say this was Jake, and I don't know. I almost want to look it up. But somebody, we'll just say it's Jake, even if I'm wrong. Somebody had their girl come in to get kissed by Rude, and they may have done something. Yes, here it is. It was Cheryl Roberts. I hit it. So she did an act, we'll say an act that may involve depositing something in someone's mouth. I'm trying to be very, very careful with my word choices here, but she didn't have an empty mouth when she kissed Rick Rude. She may have had she might have had a little bit of snake venom in there. And she then, as Rick Rude was kissing her, spit that in the Rude's mouth and said something like, "That's from Jake," or something like that, or Jake says hi or something as a rib. Yeah,
people got to die that night. There's gonna be.
So they actually make a storyline. Precious is just like flabbergasted here.
Yeah, people would die that night. I never knew that story. That was a thing.
Yeah. So the other thing they do, the TV
that
thing,
terminology, children, is called snowballs. Snowball.
Yeah. So they did a thing. They did an angle with Cheryl Roberts where, Rude tries to pick her out of the crowd to, okay. So John was talking about what I'm talking about here, which is the actual angle. Jake tries to pull, Rude tries to pull Cheryl Roberts, Jake's wife, out of the crowd, and she's saying no, and he's like being a little aggressive about it, and Jake comes out and breaks it up, and that leads to the first SummerSlam in '88, where what John is talking about, Rude was wrestling the Junkyard Dog, I believe, and he's up on the top rope, and he pulls his tights down, and under his tights, he has tights with Cheryl Roberts airbrushed onto the groinal area. And that kind of kicks off the Jake Roberts Rick Rude feud. And
Rick Rude's tights when he would airbrush stuff onto them was amazing.
One of my favorite ones was when he was in WCW, and he had like all these major stars in WCW, Sting, Ric Flair, all these people, and it just says "beat them all." Yeah. It's like, damn, that's good stuff. That's good stuff.
There was a wrestler who was starting to do that with his gear, but now he doesn't wrestle.
And yeah, he's no longer around. John says, I don't remember the snowball thing.
Yeah, it may not have been Cheryl. I think it just might have been somebody that the Jake was seeing on the side. It would have been one of the people on.
Here's what I want you to do, honey. You go ahead and keep that in there, and then you're gonna give it to Rick and tell him Jake said hi. Oh God, yeah, I would if that's I don't think.
Yeah, I remember hearing that story.
I don't think we could be friends if that ever happened. I'd be like, yo, our friendship is done. Like that's like I have like that's too much.
Yeah,
but anyway,
so the reason I'm telling the whole Jake, we're going over the whole Jake Rude thing is because they have a match on Saturday night's main event. Rude is in the Heenan family, so is Andre the Giant, and Andre attacks Jake, and Andre interferes on Rude's behalf, and Jake takes his snake and throws it at Andre, and Andre basically, and it's kind of sad because this will actually happen 4 years later, Andre kind of basically acts like he has a heart attack in the ring, and like Heenan's pounding on his chest trying to get him because he had a heart attack because he was afraid of snakes. So he's a giant. He's indestructible, but he's definitely afraid of snakes. And so they do try to really key in on Damien, even though Jake's kind of an afterthought here because the feud they were really trying to build to is Andre Stud. Andre Stud is what they were trying to do with house shows, but Stud didn't last very long here. And Andre could barely walk at this point. He's holding on to the rope the whole time. He's stumbling all over. Andre is in very, very bad shape here. And this is barely a match. It's kind of just sad to see Andre in this state. He wasn't long for wrestling at this point. This is actually one of his last singles matches. Later on this year, he's going to be in a tag team with Haku, and Haku is going to do like 90% of the work, and Andre's going to stand on the apron. And WrestleMania 6 is kind of the end. He might have had a few matches here and there. But as far as like big matches on a big stage, WrestleMania 6, where him and Haku lose with Demolition, is the end of it. But the finish here is Virgil and DiBiase go to try to steal Damien. Jake gets Damien back, but Andre goes after Stud. Jake wins by DQ. And yeah, it's the story's fine, but Andre is just so limited at this point.
It's not prime. Yeah.
Then we get a backstage interview with Sherry. Sherry's making fun of Rockin' Robin's National or America the Beautiful, which wasn't great. Rockin' Robin, better wrestler than a singer. And she laughs about the impending explosion of the Mega Powers. And shortly after this is when she goes, it's actually this night they do the angle where, but it's off screen and showing on TV later, where she joins forces with Savage, and then the next show or the next match, it's way too many matches, is the Hart Foundation against the Honky Tonk Man and Greg Valentine. Not quite yet Rhythm and Blues. Yes, Rockin' Rebel was probably a better singer. I don't even know if John was here for that when you said it was Rockin' Rebel.
Yeah,
I think John might have come in late. Shortly after this is when Valentine dyes his hair jet black and he's the Roy Orbison, the Honky's Elvis. But for right now, it's just the Hart Foundation, and
he's another one I didn't start watching until later on. I was a kid, and I was just like, I don't get, like, I never got into a Honky Tonk Man match.
You're not a beautiful audience. That's why.
Yeah. I don't know. Just never. He never captivated me as like, oh boy, this guy's really, 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 really good. But maybe if I watch his like older stuff.
Yeah, cowardly heel stuff. It was again more about the character. It wasn't really about what he did in the ring. Yeah. It was the character. Yeah. So the finish here is Jimmy Hart tries to interfere. Not a good night for Jimmy Hart. Not a good night at all for Jimmy Hart. Tries to interfere, but he gets chased away by Jim Neidhart. Brett grabs the megaphone, clocks the Honky Tonk Man, gets the 3 count. Jimmy Hart will get his revenge at WrestleMania 7 with the Nasty Boys, win the tag titles from the Hart Foundation. And that's the end of Brett and Neidhart as a tag team. But for this night, it's the Hart Foundation getting the win. And I think they wound up doing a program shortly after this with the Brainbusters, which really was the end of ramping up the Brainbusters for the tag titles. Moving on, because this show is long and there's a lot of matches. A match that shocked me when I was a kid. A 5-year-old BP Burke was shocked here because, Rick Rude dealt to Warrior. The Warrior's going to kill him. This is going to be it's going to be over in like a few minutes. But it's for the Intercontinental title, and Rick Rude would like to have the Atlantic City Sweat Hogs keep the noise down, and he has Warrior airbrushed all over his tights, and Warrior gets blown up really bad in this match. Really bad. He's out of gas toward the end.
Warrior's another one I never got into. I never got into Warrior. But I loved Rick Rude.
I loved the Ultimate Warrior.
Rick Rude. I loved, like, he was one of my favorites. Every now and then he's got to bust one out. You got to bust out a little. Rude tries his ass off with the Warrior. They had a match at SummerSlam later this year where Warrior gets the title back that is much better. And Rude busts out like a Gonzo bomb. Like, he just drops Warrior on his head. I call it the Ravishing Driver 89. That match that we watched with Rude, or no, we talked about it, and I went and watched it, was Rude and Sting in Japan, or Rude and...
Is that the match where Rude breaks his back? Yeah.
They fucking killed each other. That match was crazy.
Rick Rude, for a point, right before that, around like 92, 93, when he was in WCW, may have been the best wrestler in America.
So
Brett was doing really good. Michaels was on the upswing. Rick Rude as a total package in the ring as a character. Vader was a great top heel, but you could have easily put Rick Rude as your world champion and been just fine.
He's another one that I'm bummed I'll never get to meet.
Rick Rude in the Dangerous Alliance is as good as it gets as a top tier heel. And he's one of those guys where he looked a lot better after the haircut. That perm here, it didn't age well. He gets the shorter haircut later this year, I think, and a much better look for Rick Rude. Maybe that was the year after that. Yeah, that might have been 90. But the finish here, and they kind of tease it. When I was watching this back, they kind of tease it in the opener. Like, they show a thing where, like, Haku and Hercules are on the apron, and Heenan's kind of eyeing him up, but he doesn't do anything. And I didn't realize until I watched it back, or it might have even been during the Brainbusters match, but one of those matches, like, Heenan sees something, and then he's planting seeds. Best manager of all time, planting seeds. Because here, Rude's on the apron, Warrior tries to suplex him in. Heenan grabs the leg, holds on for dear life. I love the finish. They've done this finish in other places, and I always think it's a great finish. He just holds on the Warrior's leg so he can't kick out, and Rude gets the shock pin. And then Warrior tries to take it out on Heenan and just horribly botches a press slam. Poor Bobby Heenan. Poor Bobby Heenan. It's funny. Just talking about how, and we've talked about before, like, who's the best manager. And I think I think that my Mount Rushmore is pretty solidly. It's going to be Heenan, Cornette, Heyman, and Jimmy Hart.
So you like the shorter hair on Rude?
Yeah, that perm was a little much. That perm was a little poofy.
I think you're crazy.
You like the perm?
Yeah.
I like the perm too, but I don't favor either one. I like both.
The only thing that was really messed up was whenever Rick Rude would be clean shaven. It just didn't look right. Whenever he would shave off the mustache, it would look really weird.
The mustache. I'm trying to find my favorite photo of Rude when he's IC champion, and he has the airbrushed
title
IC title on his pants, but he's holding it. His hair in that was perfect.
And so the big upset here, Rick Rude gets the Intercontinental title. Doesn't have it long. He loses it back to Warrior at SummerSlam, but it was a great shock here. And I think they just didn't want too many high level baby faces winning, because you needed to have it reminds me of Bash at the Beach 94, which is Hulk Hogan's first show in WCW, where he wins the title from Flair. And on that show, the entire undercard, heel wins, heel wins, heel wins, heel wins. Only one babyface was going over that night, brother. So yeah, Rick Rude gets the win here. We were talking earlier about people who have no music. This is a match with two guys with no music at this point. Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Bad News Brown. And Duggan would get music shortly after this, and it's just a sped up version of Big John Studd's music. It's really just a sped up version of that. This match is kind of just there. There wasn't a huge storyline behind it. Bad News was actually feuding with Randy Savage before this. And Duggan was, I'm not sure who Duggan was feuding with, but Duggan would feud with Savage after this because he'd be King Duggan and Savage would become Macho King. Double DQ here. Bad News gets a chair. Duggan gets his 2x4. I loved Bad News Brown, but this one just didn't do a whole lot for me.
I think I'm frozen on my end. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
My screen's frozen.
Because even your visual is fine too.
Yeah, your vision. Yeah, your visual. Everything's fine.
I'm frozen. I trust you. I trust you. But yeah, I'm frozen on mine. So if I jump out, it's because my computer crashed or something.
You're frozen. Trust me. You're fine. There's not a snake behind you.
Yeah, I can't even control it.
ABJ wants to see. He wants to see.
Yeah, if I could see anything right now, it'd be great.
He wants to see. You can kind of skip the next match, which is very, very short. It's the Red Rooster against Bobby the Brain Heenan. And Bobby, I think he's legit hurt from that Warrior Press Slam. And the story coming into this is Red Rooster was brought in by Bobby Heenan. He was Terry Taylor, one of the final Mid-South champions, had a small run. The UWF, he had a small run when it was taken over by Crockett. And he was like, the whole thing was, I'm going to take a wrestler with no talent, or just a middling wrestler with not a lot of talent, and I'm going to turn him into a winner. And he would just constantly demean the Red Rooster. And eventually Red Rooster turns on him. And this leads to an angle on Primetime Wrestling, which is one of the, before they did it with Vader, and I think they did it with Austin too. It's one of the last times Gorilla Monsoon actually takes a bump, is they have a thing where Red Rooster's on Primetime Wrestling, and Brooklyn Brawler comes in and hits Monsoon with a stool and beats up the Rooster. But this match, again, this is another one where the description we're doing is longer than the match itself, because it's just a little back and forth. Heenan misses a dive, takes a shoulder into the post, gets rolled up for the 3, and that's pretty much it.
At this point, Heenan had put in a full days of work.
Oh yeah, managing. I'm surprised, and even without doing the announcing, because a lot of times on TV he would announce, and then it was usually when they would do the voiceover commentary. He would announce, and then he would leave the announce table to go manage his guy. But yeah, Heenan, this is one of the last big times he wrestles. He would wrestle on house shows a little bit after this with the Big Boss Man, when they would do the things where he was constantly making fun of Big Boss Man's mother, and it was supposed to lead to a Boss Man Rick Rude feud, but Rick Rude left the company shortly after SummerSlam 90. So there's a Coliseum video. It's like WWF's funniest moments, where Heenan is just begging the Boss Man to call off the match. He's apologizing profusely. He's saying, "I just got off the phone with your mother. The phone is in the back. It's still there." It's so good. It's so good. Was this after the Weasel Suit matches? Yeah. The Warrior Weasel Suit matches were in 88. It was before Warrior won the Intercontinental title because he was feuding with Hercules. And when that was when Hercules was still with Heenan, and they would do the Weasel Suit matches. Because, and I'm going to age myself here, Precious. I'm sure your parents will know what I'm talking about. Prism. There was a pay channel called Prism that was specific to the Philadelphia area. And it would have movies, it would have Flyers games, Phillies games, Sixers games, and it would have the shows from the Spectrum. A lot of them, like the ones from MSG, would be on MSG Network. They would film the shows from the Spectrum, and they would have clip versions of them on Prism. And I remember just flipping through channels, and on Prism, they had a Weasel Suit match with Bobby Heenan and the Warrior. And the original ones were Bobby Heenan and Greg Gagne in AWA. And it made me think of Smashmaster. We just did a Smashmaster wrestling show, the last one they did for Uncle Masty's 40th birthday. And they had a scrambler match, pin the tail on the scrambler, where it was the Gray brothers, who are a tag team that's coming into the area now, was in that. Grimm from Grimm's Toy Show. Tommy Vex, the great Tommy Vex, was involved. I'm forgetting people. AJ Evers, the king of the scrambler. And I swear I'm forgetting somebody, and I apologize for them. I forget who else was involved in the match. Fun match. And but the whole idea behind the match is they had a tail, like pin the tail on the donkey, and you could win by either pinning the tail on an opponent or pinning the opponent with the tail. Alexander Bateman, yes, thank you, John. I think it was because I didn't recognize him, because he has transformed his body in his time away from wrestling. He looked great. Back and better than ever, Alexander Bateman. Speaking of back and better than ever, I believe that is
wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that was a perfect transition.
Nailed it.
I was talking about the pin the tail on the scrambler match because we brought up the Weasel Suit matches.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a Weasel match in TNA?
I believe they would do the turkey thing every year, where if you lost the match on Thanksgiving, was when Impact would run on Thursdays, would have a Thanksgiving episode.
It was a chicken suit.
For it, TNA was a turkey because it was on Thanksgiving. They've done chicken soup matches before.
Wasn't what's his name? I don't want to but
AJ Styles wore the turkey suit before.
No, but didn't someone pitch the chicken suit at Impact, and then it went to Chikara, and then it came to Leapfrog?
They may have. Yeah. There's a lot. But I was talking about the scrambler with Tommy Vex and the weasel, or the tail, because he did the same thing that Bobby Heenan did. He just chases his tail, because what they would do with Gagne is Greg Gagne's finisher was a sleeper, so he would put Heenan to sleep. He would be unconscious while they put the weasel suit on. He would come to, he would just look down at his hands, and there would be paws, and then he would just pat himself and be like, "I have fur now." Yeah. And he would just run around. He would try to elbow drop his tail. Great stuff. Bobby Heenan was the best. Ryan Vox, Late Night Prism, did a 12-year-old boy good. Yeah, Prism had some interesting stuff at night, like a lot of those pay channels did. But yeah, we spent much longer in this Red Rooster Bobby Heenan match than the match happened. Backstage interview with Elizabeth. She said this has been difficult for her. She'll be in a neutral corner, support both men. And she just hopes no one gets hurt.
Fucked up.
Well, look,
bro, if you're with your girl,
and I don't think they ever explicitly said that Savage and Elizabeth were a couple at this point. I think she was just supposed to be his manager. It was implied that they were together.
Yeah,
but I don't think they ever came out and said
I'd be hot.
If you were, look, I've made.
You were my chick, and I brought you in, and you were and then I introduced you to my friend, and then you're like, listen, I don't know, I'm gonna stay in the middle. I'd be like, what? Who brought you here?
So
get in the back. I'm locking the door.
This is and there's certainly a point where it goes too far, and like she gets shoved and things like that. But for the most part, until he gets physical with Elizabeth, this is one of the first times where the heel is absolutely right. Hogan had lust in his eyes for Elizabeth.
Hogan's a scumbag.
And they did a thing on Primetime Wrestling. It's a great interview with Savage where he just goes through the year and shows everything that Hogan did. Like they did a thing at SummerSlam where the finish is it looks like the Mega Powers are done, and Elizabeth rips off her skirt. And she has like a very tame by today's standards, just like it looks like a bathing suit bottom, like a full bathing suit bottom, but people flip out like she's naked. And like Savage and or DiBiase and Andre are mesmerized, and that allows the Mega Powers to get the advantage. But then Savage puts Elizabeth up on her shoulder, and Hogan says he's making sure she's balanced, but he literally just touches her ass. There's a thing where like something's happened with Savage, and Hogan just runs and hugs Liz instead of checking on Savage. There's like a million little things. There's like, yeah, Savage was right. They also do show the match where it's the Twin Towers against Hogan and Savage against the Mega Powers, and Liz takes a hell of a bump. Like Savage comes flying through those ropes and just lands directly on Elizabeth. She took a bump and a half here in that one. But yeah, so anyway, one of the other really good touches is they go backstage with Tony Schiavone, and it's like the locker room is empty. Everybody went out to watch this match. That's how important it is. I love that little touch. That was great. So then we get the Mega Powers exploding. I never like it when the champion comes out first, but Hulk Hogan is Hulk Hogan. The Savage comes out before Elizabeth. Like Savage comes out and then he plays music again, and Elizabeth comes out next. And Pat Patterson was there just batting away fans trying to grab at Elizabeth. And
she was going back and rewatching all the Elizabeth stuff, man. She was as big as they were.
She was a star.
She was a big deal.
She was. She was kind of she made that Randy Savage character work, and I was gonna say it suffered because this is kind of the end of her as a regular character. I'm gonna guess Savage didn't want her touring with anybody besides him, and if she was a babyface and he was a heel, it wasn't gonna work. The only thing that kind of really made Savage not skip a beat is he goes right with Sherry, and Sherry was incredible.
Yeah,
Sherry is Elizabeth is a great babyface manager. Sherry is a great heel manager. Sherry was Savage did not lose a thing going. It's
funny as like growing up too. I always thought just Sherry, like not Sherry, that Elizabeth didn't even like try. She just kind of stood there, but she was over. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, well, yeah, like, and she was good at showing concern. She could sell concern on her face.
Yeah,
but yeah, she wasn't getting involved.
It's not that it was effortlessness. There was just very specific direction with the little that she was doing that worked.
Yeah.
And then later in WCW, she's a heel, and she was really good.
Yeah.
When she they did a thing where like she joins Ric Flair, and they're coming out and they have like a big private table at Nitro and fine wine and lobster and all this stuff, and it's like, oh, it's all on Randy's credit card. Great stuff. Great stuff. Yeah, and John's absolutely right. She was she was classy. He's like, she's too good for wrestling. Why is she here? Like that was the vibe you got from Elizabeth. And she was she was like that girl next door too. She had that likability.
Yep.
Good match here. It's every Hogan match you've ever seen where he's getting beat up for 90% of it and then does the big comeback at the end. Savage trying his ass off. Savage doing everything. A lot of people in retrospect have said like maybe they should have did something where like Hogan wins by DQ, but even though you don't want to do a DQ finish in the WrestleMania main event, somehow Savage gets the win here and you just stretch it out to SummerSlam and Hogan gets the title back then. But as Bruce Pritchard has said, Hogan must pose. So beautiful flying elbow. There's so many great flying elbows now, but nobody does it like Randy Savage. And it only gets to 2. We get the Hulk up, the big boot, the leg drop. Sayonara, Randy Savage. You'll be the Macho King soon, and you'll win the title again at WrestleMania 8.
Yeah, when Hogan wants to go do another movie.
Well, at that point, Hogan was retiring. Hogan was going away because of the steroid scandal at WrestleMania 8. No, when Hogan went to do another movie, he lost the title to the Warrior. That was WrestleMania 6.
Yeah.
And he went to make Suburban Commando, which was another bad movie.
I've never seen it to this day.
Suburban Commando, like there's some things that were. It has a little more charm than the whole.
Suburban Commando was always in the trailers of when I watched the Ninja Turtle movie.
Okay, yeah.
And I never
that I believe was the second movie I saw in the theaters. Yeah, at WrestleMania 8, they did decide to do a DQ finish in the main event. Yeah. And Papa Shango was a little late on it and Sid had to kick out of the leg drop. So yeah, that's WrestleMania 5. This show, I know the work rate isn't there. I know it's too many matches and it's too damn long, but it takes me back to the time that I became a wrestling fan. Well, I was always a wrestling fan, but my conscious awareness, I was 5 years old when this happened.
Yeah.
And this is like the start of me having that conscious recollection of pro wrestling.
And Savage essentially was birthed in your brain.
Yeah, well, I was on Team Hogan here because I was done with that. I know now that the Hogan had lust in his eyes and he was Lust Hogan, the luster, as Jesse Ventura would say. But no, when Savage went heel, I was like, I'm done with you.
Yeah, I never got into Hogan.
I was a right down the middle kid. The first heel I actually liked was Vader, and that was a bit later.
Really?
That was like 94.
I immediately liked all the bad guys in wrestling. I loved it.
No, I was Team Hogan was never like my favorite. Savage was my favorite until a heel turn, and then I kind of became like a warrior guy.
Yeah. The only time I really liked a babyface was the Rockers. I liked the Rockers, and then I was a Savage guy. I was a Piper. Well, Piper was like a mix.
Piper was a heel in the beginning, then
Jake,
from like
Rude,
WrestleMania.
Perfect. Yeah.
The prelude to WrestleMania 3 on, Piper's a babyface.
Mostly the Heenan family was like I like the Heenan family.
And John's sharing my sentiment. Always a Savage guy. Savage is my favorite wrestler of all time.
Now, do you think Savage put Hogan through the same shit he put Ricky through?
Wait, what?
Like with match prep?
I don't know. I know Savage had that reputation for he liked to have everything scripted. He liked to have the entire match scripted. So it's possible, although Hogan would have the sway to say no. But I don't know how much Hogan liked that. But there's certain guys who had that reputation. They liked everything. DDP was another one. That's why Savage and DDP like really liked working with one another because it would just plan the entire match out. And they both loved it. Yeah. And that's why Savage was he made it a point like I want to put DDP over.
Yeah. Well, before we cut out of here, I just want to give Precious a little spotlight here. So you weren't with us for a couple weeks. You did a little traveling.
I did.
And you have a little wrestling related news during your travels.
I do. I was in LA for a week. I got to visit my family, which getting time to spend family who does not live on the same coast as you is always very important. So if you have opportunities to see people, look, life is very short. So if you have the opportunity, you never know when it's going to end. So if you have the opportunity to go and see someone that you care about, that they care about you, you go and do it if it's possible. So I got to go out and visit my sister and her boyfriend. And while I was out there, prior to leaving, I had reached out to a couple different places because I've been spending it's pretty much every Wednesday night. There's a Twitter space hosted by Gabe Sapolsky. And in those Twitter spaces, it's usually a bunch of like independent professional wrestlers and a bunch of different promotions. It's a place for workers and people within the business. And it's a whole lot of networking and information that's being explained. It's a really cool opportunity. In that, I told them I was heading to LA, and they're like, you should hit up Brian Kendrick because he's based out there. Long story, kind of short. I hit him up. He got back to me, and the Thursday that I was in LA, I got to train with Brian Kendrick.
That's awesome. He's someone that when he came to PPW, obviously with all the backstory and everything that went out and that was going down, everyone's like, "Ooh, is this a good idea?" Da 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 da. And I remember I talked to, at that time we became friends with and close with Kerry, and Kerry's like, "Hey, he's my boy. Like, I got you." Like, and he came in and me and Kerry and Brian kind of sat in the back a little bit, and he like had us talk. And what a sweet human. And I remember he did a seminar that day, and he was just like, "If there's one advice, Brian," and he goes, "Don't get under the influence of stuff and do anything silly on a podcast."
that first time he was there, they did a formal seminar later. He just did an impromptu free seminar.
Yeah.
Right, just spur of the moment. The second time, one of the other times he was there, he did an actual like paid formal seminar. But yeah, he just hopped in the ring and just helped people. It
was crazy. I was backstage before his match because I wasn't on commentary for that one. I was like, "You good?" And he's like, "Bro, I'm legit. Like, I hope I'm not like ruining anything or saying something he wouldn't want." But he was like, "I'm legit scared. Like, I'm nervous." And I go, "What do you mean?" I said, you've wrestled at WrestleMania, my guy. Like, what are you scared about wrestling in Broadheadsville for? He goes, I'm nervous that the fans aren't going to accept me, because it was like his first time back.
Yeah, it was right after he got that AEW booking pulled out from under him. Yeah, it was like right after.
It was months after that, because he disappeared for a while. The AEW stuff happened, and he vanished for a while, like a couple months. And this was his first time back since any of that. And he was like, I'm genuinely afraid that people are going to hate me. I'm genuinely afraid that they're not going to accept me. And he went out there, and I believe he worked VSK.
I don't know if that was that night, but I know he did it at one point.
He worked someone that night, and they tore the house down. Like, it was unbelievable. And everybody gave him a standing ovation. And he hit the curtain again. He was like, he liked wrestling again. Like, it re-sparked him. And it was cool to see someone like that just be vulnerable and just fall back in love with the thing that he loves. You know what I mean? Professional wrestling.
And just to see his process later that night, Big Damo was there that night.
Yeah.
This was when Tom Mitchell was still doing the backstage interviews. He was in training, but he wasn't in the ring yet. He hadn't actually gotten to the point where he was ready to do matches yet. And he was always, even before he was a trained wrestler, like, do whatever you want to me. Like, he was not afraid to be physical with the wrestlers. So they're doing a thing where Big Damo grabs Tom Mitchell and just starts shaking him. Like, and Kendrick is like directing the promo. He's promo coaching backstage and just giving Damo direction, more over the top, more 80s, because he was thinking about like 80s wrestling like this, like just be as big of a character as you can, until at the very end, Damo grabs Tom Mitchell, shakes him, and throws him. Tom goes into the backdrop, and it just falls. And it was amazing. It was so good.
Yeah, there's two people that really, really, really come to mind at PPW that showed up, and they're both Silken guys. They're both Kerry guys, which says a lot too. That showed up, literally could have just did their match, left, and did what they had to do and get out of there. But they were so giving to all the talent and talking to everybody and helping with promos and helping give feedback after their matches and generally caring. And those two people was Brian Cage and Jay
Brian
Lethal.
Kendrick.
I'm sorry, Brian Kendrick and Jay
Brian
Lethal.
Cage, very cool too, though. Brian Cage
was one of the coolest things I've ever seen, because he came in working Facade. Then they threw 9 other people in his match, and he literally went, "All right, cool, let's rework it." Everyone's getting their shit in, and he was so like, and he bumped for everybody. Like,
and then one of those guys wind up getting signed by AEW a few months later.
Andretti, yeah, he did.
Yeah. And just one last thing, Brian Kendrick also always will have a spot in my mind, because he was literally the third person I ever interviewed when I started doing backstage interviews. My third interview was with Brian Kendrick.
Crazy, but what was your experience like? How was it being with him?
So it's the first time I've ever wrestled, like, because I had one appearance outside of the Sanctuary for Orochi Pro, but it was a promo. I stepped into the ring, but nothing was done in that ring. This was my first time ever wrestling outside of the Sanctuary. And that being said, it was also the first time I wrestled on a completely different coast. So getting there.
How was it taking a bump on not a Tempur-Pedic mattress?
I was fine with it. I'm very lucky to have really good trainers who taught me how to bump properly.
Yeah.
So bumping honestly wasn't an issue for me. I was like, it was definitely like stiffer compared to the Sanctuary, but I was like, nah, I know what I'm doing. I had confidence in that end. I get to the building. I'm dropped off via Uber, and he drops me off, and he's like, is this cool? I was like, yeah, sure. I had no idea. Because the outside of the building was like an auto collision store. So I walk up to it, and it's like gated off too. It's like a gate and then a door. So I'm standing there, and it's like 10:55, and it was supposed to start at 11. I was like, I have no idea if I'm at the right place. So I started walking away from it. And then, because I couldn't tell if that was the front entrance or not. So then I walked back to it, and one of the other guys was getting out of his car. And he's like, are you here for wrestling? I was like, yes, I am. I have no idea if he's like, no, you're good. So then he unlocked the door. I forget his name. It was Brian, and then the other guy. And I forget if it was another B name, but there was so much on my mind in the moment that I couldn't focus on too many names. He unlocks this gate. We then walk in, and I'm in a barber shop. And then you go through another door, and there's a wall. the wall separates an indoor soccer facility from another door. Inside that door is where the wrestling ring was.
I love pro wrestling.
Oh yeah. I was like, okay, I'm in the right spot.
It was like the old CZW school was in like a cheerleading camp, and
So
it was the CZW school.
I was just waiting there, and then eventually, like, they went around. There was a rear entrance where everyone was parked at. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. And then Brian came in. I got to shake his hand. I got to introduce myself, and then I was meeting some of the guys. I got to have some conversations, and I started to like getting a feel for the place. And I was like, okay, this feels comfortable. Like, this is a welcoming environment. I got that right away. So then we did a group stretch, and then right after the group stretch, Brian got into the ring and immediately started explaining the drill that we are going to be doing. And it wasn't a drill. We were specifically working a tag team match, and there were very specific components to it where I could get into the whole thing because I wrote all of the details down, but we're already at like 2 hours.
Go ahead, have fun.
So it started off with, okay, there's babyface 1 and babyface 2, and then there's heel 1 and heel 2. It started off with the babyface 1 initially getting the upper hand on the heel, and then we went through like all of these specific steps. I don't want to get into all of it for personal reasons too. So we get into each of the steps of it where there's like a sequence of 3 where the babyfaces team tandem hit 3 team moves on heel 2, and eventually heel 2 then like breaks it off, tags in heel 1, and then both of the baby faces hit stereo moves and then another stereo move, and they're strong. And that was like the end of sequence 1 of it. Then from there had to be a very specific cut off to where, oh, baby face 1 is about to tag baby face 2 back in, and heel 2 cuts it off, like pulls him off the rope. It didn't matter. That was where Brian was looking for things to be creatively done. Like, think of a way in how naturally, organically that could happen. And then from there, the heels took over, and they had their sequences of heel 1 having 3 sequences. And then babyface 1, the one who started the match, is the one who is taking all of the heat at this point. And it's building to a hot tag. And eventually he gets the tag, but the ref didn't see it. So I come into the ring. In this sequence, I was babyface 2. I come to the ring ready to tear shit up, and in the moment we had messed up. Like, the ref saw the tag, and I didn't. There was an awkward like 5 seconds, and then we just kept going. The ref just like pushed me out of the way. He's like, "No, I didn't see the tag. Get back there." I was like, "Okay." But then we kept going, and then eventually it led back up to babyface making the hot tag. The hot tag comes in, bam, bit. Bam, bit, big move to heel 2, big move to heel 1, hit big move, which in this sequence I hit a Uranagi on to heel 1, 1, 2, heel 2 breaks up the tag, then immediately goes for tag finish without even tagging in, immediately goes for tag finish. Babyface 1 breaks up the tag finish, and then baby faces hit stereo moves again on both of the heels, and that was the finish. 1, 2, 3. So afterwards, once we got done our match, and in the moment again, I'm like, oh, okay, I got to do all of this, and I got to remember all of this, and I got to learn.
Real quick, Precious.
Yeah.
For people listening who may not know, how long have you been in the business now?
10 months, a little over 10 months.
Killing it, brother.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm going right into this, and I didn't ask any questions because I understood what we were going over.
The initiative that you literally have been training 10 months at the Sanctuary, doing Sanctuary, and I have a follow-up question for you after this, after you tell your thing. But like, for you to take the initiative and be like, I was on a Twitter space with people in the independent scene, went out of my comfort zone, contacted Brian Kendrick while you were in Cali, and just showed up with a bunch of complete strangers and went in there and got the work in. I'm proud of you, man.
Is it wrong that I kind of now want to see a team that's just called heel 1 and heel 2, and they're in like black masks and black trunks or black tights, and their finish is just called tag finish?
Yeah.
I want this. It's just like the laziest gimmick ever. Heel
like
1 and heel 2.
You literally went out of your comfort zone, and I know this probably doesn't mean anything to the conversation, but I want to say it, but I don't know if you're comfortable with me saying it, but at the time when I met Kendrick, you were kind of hesitant. Like I said, hey, I might have him on the show, and you were, because you're from a Jewish family.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that was said, you weren't comfortable with yet. You know what I mean? You stood, you know, in a certain spot, and then we talked, and then I kind of told you what he said at PPW and how he was remorseful, and you're like, all right, that's all I needed to hear. And then rewind how many months later, and you're getting trained by a dude who was trained by Michaels and would train with Daniel Bryan. Like, it's just crazy. Like, you're 10 months in and you're already willing to take these steps, and I'm very, very proud of you, man.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, even after the fact, I'm still honestly a little conflicted, personally, about it, because I did have other opportunities that I could have done when I was in LA. I also reached out to Santino Bros, and they got back to me like later in the week, and I was like, oh man, I could have done that as well. Granted, like the experience. So immediately after the match, he immediately gave us feedback. Our match started, and I was like, all right, I gotta focus on all of these things. And heel one comes up to me while they're circling each other and like face washes me. And I just kind of like took it, and I did like one of those, and I got back to the match. That was the first thing that Brian had a note for. He was like, when that happened and you didn't react, like you were gonna come in and try to, and then have the ref back you up. I let that moment die. I let that face wash die with that. And it should have been something that could have been a catalyst to the circus with the referee. And thank you very much, Ryan Box. So yeah, he immediately gave that feedback, and then he got on.
Go ahead, you got it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Then
we're opening and closing comments. You should not have given me this power. I'm abusing it.
He continued with like intent and selling to thousands of people, thousands big. And he also made a really good point of, as a babyface, you are living the fans' dream. They are living vicariously through you. So since you are the wrestler, you are the babyface, you are the one who wants to go against bad guy just hits you in the face, you get in there. You make the referee back you up. You don't just. So I was like, wow, that's really good advice. And I was like pissed that I didn't get that, because that's a lot of what I've been taught at the Sanctuary is intent and not letting things die like that. So then when I messed that specific part up, I was like, damn. But I realized that I was.
So that's my quick question for you, is how in your 10 months of training, and maybe this is a testament to where you're coming from, because I think more people should be aware of the Sanctuary and put that on a spot where maybe they can get their training done. How much of the Sanctuary prepared you to then leave that style of training to then go to a place like the School of Brian Kendrick?
Yeah, that's a great question. So originally, before my buddy Ternitza, Chunk, you guys are aware of him.
Yeah.
At the Sanctuary, he actually filmed my first match at the Sanctuary. He was like, "Hey, man, in LA they got a little bit of a different pace out there. You got to be ready for everything." So obviously, I had so much preconceived, but I didn't try to let it factor in. I was way more just focused on, okay, live in the moment, be ready for what they ask for you, be able to do this, and that has helped me. A little bit of that is my own personal ability to like be thrown into the fire. Like, I learned bass by being thrown into the fire. I was in jazz band. They're like, hey, we need another bassist. And they immediately threw the music at me. I was like, well, I guess I have to learn how to read music to play bass. So this was no different. And then the environment there was very loose. It was, all right, what do you got? And then the feedback afterwards, it was very easy to ask questions and get feedback and have time to talk to everyone. It was a very similar environment. So I was very prepared. And like the teachings that I've gotten at the Sanctuary, like the way that Brian Kendrick was talking was very similar to the way that like John Trotsky talks and like explains things. So the fact that it was like a very similar vernacular or colloquialism about wrestling, I was like, this is the same conversation. I understand what's being said. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit of my own just personality and who I am that made me ready for it, but also the Sanctuary between Trotsky, Schultz, a little bit of Palco, a little bit of Andre, and obviously Billy Walker. Like, there's so many different perspectives and different talent that made me ready, and different social environments that have made me ready for that moment.
Yeah, your training situation at the Sanctuary is unbelievable. You're literally one of the people training you. Just trained the first ever women's GCW world champion, which is
I will be training with Billy tomorrow at 4 p.m.
Yeah,
excellent. Got to see him at Smashmaster a few weeks back.
Yeah, I don't know if he actually put it on his cowboy hat, but I said, you know what would look great on your cowboy hat? And I gave him the I Heart ABJ pin. I don't know if he put it on though. But yeah, that's the only bit of the wrestling news we can kind of talk about real quick before we get out of here. Masha Slamovich winning the GCW World Championship and then successfully defending it a couple days later in Canada against Speedball Mike Bailey, where they literally just destroyed the ring and took the ring apart, and she choked him out and dropped him through the boards.
Some crazy bumps, some crazy visuals, some murder. Like MDK, but not.
I was nervous that when they put her against Speedball, I was like, oh, they're not going to immediately drop it. And they seem like they're pretty, like, this is the era of Masha, which is so well deserved because Impact won't pull the trigger on her. And I'm glad GCW is.
Yeah, definitely. Because, like, I mean, obviously I could say all of the good things I can about Billy and the teachings that I've had, and like the like relationship that we've built inside of the ring and at the sanctuary. Like, I could say so much, but to see it through Masha, like I wasn't familiar with Masha before coming to the sanctuary. Now I am, and now I'm so, like, it's very deserved, and it's not just deserved, it's earned. There's a difference in that.
I've been obsessed with Masha since Camp Leapfrog, and I was like, that Soviet death match I watched her and Edith do, it's just free on YouTube. So go watch it. I was like, this is my new favorite wrestler, and I've just been following her ever since. She's amazing. I just fear that it's going to end next week.
Yeah, the collective is big. I don't know. They usually have longer title reigns. Not always, but generally they tend to have longer title reigns there. Have they announced any matches? I know Spring Break they're doing. You're gonna have Joey Janela and Kota Ibushi. Yeah. Hio del Vikingo against Mike Bailey, which should be amazing. You're gonna have the Motor City Machine Guns against the East West Express. Oh, and an open challenge by Maki Deathkill, Maki Ito, and Nick Gage with an open challenge.
Didn't the Motor City Machine Guns just like announce that they re-signed with Impact?
Yeah, but Impact is a lot more freeing now with
Masha's signed to Impact, and she's the GCW World Champion.
They'll let you do a lot more stuff now. And of course, I believe they're still doing the clusterfuck. I hope they're still doing the clusterfuck on Spring Break. That's always a highlight.
I'm gonna miss some of the GCW stuff on Friday because I will be going to Jersey. I'm gonna go and maybe go grab some content, maybe working. Who knows what is in store for ABJ? I was told by Paul Loria that there will be something.
Paul Loria.
Yeah, that something will be involved for me when I get there. But I was invited to come to the Win promotion, the SAT promotion that is being monitored by Paul Laurie and involved with Paul Laurie. So a lot of great names there. I will be there this Friday, next Friday, or this coming Friday. We're going to wrap this up because Precious's battery is about to die. But thank you guys so much for hanging out. Check out the links below for BP's Murder My Dude, Precious's links, Philly Mike Swanson's links, as well as mine. New merchandise is out there. Check out the Discord. We are growing. BP, you are being heavily requested, as well as you, Precious, in that Discord. You got to get in there.
Okay.
People want you in there. Come hang out. But guys, thank you so much. We'll be back next Thursday. Unless Mary Beth's interview has to go later at night, we'll make adjustments. But the Thursday, we'll figure something out.
I am off work Thursday, so in fact I think I don't know if I'm gonna, because Bloodsport's at 4. I definitely want to watch Bloodsport. But I'm gonna do like a stand-up comedy thing too at Pilgaroo on Thursday.
Yeah.
I might check that out.
I think I'm gonna be there as well.
At Pilgaroo?
Yeah, I think Hannah and I
want to try to talk to I should have done this earlier. I want to see if the owners would let me slip in a Fire Stick with Fight Plus on it so we can watch Bloodsport before the comedy show.
I'm down. But we may also, I'm not promising anything, but we may do some watch-alongs as well of some of the GCW collective. Even if it's not live, we may just turn it on and talk about it as we're like live streaming. So that's possible too. So lots of cool stuff coming. Next week, we'll be back with WrestleMania 28, and that'll take us to WrestleMania, and then we'll check out that. If you want to check out me talking about more current day wrestling, check me out every Sunday night, Bad Booking, right here on this channel. It's myself, CR Media. It's pretty much 4 amazing content creators all getting together and talking weekly wrestling, and that's every Sunday night. Depending if there's a WrestleMania on that Sunday night, then obviously we won't be doing it Sunday. We will adjust, but lots of great content. Thank you guys for subscribing. Please share this channel out. We're really, really close to 600 subscribers. And I'm about a quarter away of the 4,000 play hours. I'm at 600 subscribers of 1,000 for that. We're getting closer to monetization. All the help in the world would be great. Follow us on social media, and likes and shares go a long way. Thank you guys so much. We're going to wrap it up here before batteries and people dip out on us, but we'll see you guys next time with some more wrestling content and hopefully an intro video, because we have to get rid of this.